Okay, hello everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity here to make an exciting announcement and for welcoming you here with us for that exciting announcement. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Josipa Petrinic. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium. Before I go any further, I'm going to take this moment, please, to recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. And it's important for all of us to reflect on this as we've benefited from having the privilege to be granted the opportunity to be here today on their lands. So today we're here to announce a very special visionary project. It's a big project. It's a project that's ruffled a whole heck of a lot of feathers, but all in the right kind of way. First, before we enter into a little bit of discussion on that project, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of QTRIC, who we are and what we do. QTRIC is the Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium. We're an innovation consortium that essentially launches technology projects in anything that has to do with low-carbon smart mobility. So essentially, if it reduces emissions and improves mobility for Canadians, then we're involved. And this project comes out of one of the most visionary aspects of QTRIC, which is really to initiate standardized low-carbon propulsion systems in our transit systems. Now, when we start these projects, sometimes our members come to us, industry and academia, and they say to us, look, we've got a project idea. Other times, we initiate it from inside, and we go out and try and get our members to join us in an adventure. And it is an adventure. This project is a great example of the adventure that launching smart mobility is. And it's an adventure because it's faced pretty much every kind of cultural, technological, political barrier you could possibly imagine. And in order to be able to launch a project like this, you truly need champions at the table. So just to give you a bit of history, this project started 2 years ago in 2016 when we went across the country and we essentially said to transit agencies, what's your problem? Why don't you have electric transit vehicles here in your systems today? And we heard a whole heck of a lot of reasons for why they didn't. Lack of standardization, they didn't know about the technology, they didn't have the right people on staff, they thought they needed 600 hours of battery pack, et cetera, et cetera. And what we did was we focused with some of our champion transit agencies, including here TransLink today, to really focus in on what could Canada do, where could Canada be the first out the door, and how could Canadians essentially launch a transit electrification project that was different from anywhere else in the world. And what we came to a conclusion with regards to is the fact that we could launch a project here that would be for the first time in the world a standardized electric bus integrated high-power charging system. What that means is buses that are charged en route at 450 kilowatts and above, a high-power system that brings your charging time down to relative few minutes, a system that allows people to benefit from zero-emissions transit and transportation while seamlessly being able to get on and off buses while they actually charge in operation. So that is a world first, and that is what we are here to announce today. First, I want to say thank you to our colleagues at TransLink for being such a champion as an agency. We have champions here on staff, Sarah Bucko, Melody Williams, Dylan Casola, and of course, Kevin Desmond, CEO of TransLink. It's really important to note that when we started this project in 2016, we heard a lot of no's. We heard a lot of no's. We heard city councils that didn't want to get involved. We heard transit leaders that didn't want to get involved. We heard from manufacturers that didn't want to get involved. TransLink came on board along with Brampton Transit and York Region Transit to launch this initiative, and it really comes down to leadership. So when we look at what the team at TransLink did, what Kevin Desmond did, they made a decision about the future, they stuck to that decision, and they launched the technology project that was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And that is leadership. It's sticking to a vision even when all of the challenges come in your way. So through that din of negativity that we heard out there, we were able to come together and launch what is the world's first multi-manufacturer standardized fast-charged electric bus demonstration and integration trial. The project integrates 2 Canadian-based competitive bus manufacturers, New Flyer Novabus. It integrates 2 competitive charging system developers, ABB and Siemens. And those system developers, those manufacturers, have to demonstrate that their buses and e-chargers plug and play seamlessly on the roads of Vancouver, Brampton, and York region. In summary, the project is essentially a national consortium now that includes 4 manufacturers, 3 transit agencies, 3 utilities, 3 cities, 2 provinces, 1 federal government, 1 national research agency, and a QTRIC that's leading the charge along the way. So this is a project that has amounted to $40 million in total across the country. It will launch with 18 standardized electric buses, 7 overhead chargers, varying in power capacity up to 450 kilowatts, and it will launch across 5 routes in those 3 cities that I mentioned. So it's an impressive trial. There is no doubt about that. And I could wax poetic about this all day, and I certainly will. There is no doubt about that as well. But before we do, I would like to take an opportunity here to introduce our speaking party and several of our leaders here today who are going to add a few of their comments to the launch that we're discussing presently. The Honourable Joe Pescatelito, who is the Member of Parliament for Steveston-Reachmond East, Kevin Desmond, the CEO of TransLink, Mayor Gregor Robertson of the City of Vancouver, David Warren, Director of Sustainable Transportation at New Flyer, and Chris Turnbecke, Vice President of Finance at Nova Bus. I'd also like to take the opportunity to introduce to you just some folks who are in the audience today who have helped to actually make this possible. So we have several members here from the Metro Vancouver Board of Directors, the members of the Metro Vancouver's Mayor Council. We have Hayden Atchison, who's the President of Coast Mountain Bus Company. We have Kim Gergulis, who is the Transportation Greenhouse Sector's Account Manager at BC Hydro. We have Siobhan Jackson, who's a Manager in Key Account Management at BC Hydro. We have several staff from New Flyer and Nova Bus here with us today, and we additionally have our colleagues from QTRIC, Lana Sanderson, among others. We also have several of our members here from QTRIC, companies represented like Ballard and Velo Metro and Future Vehicle Technologies, who are members of our consortium here in British Columbia. Now, before we go further, and before I introduce the Member of Parliament, you'll recognize that many of us here today are wearing jerseys. And I'll be frank, I actually don't know very much about hockey. To be honest, I'm one of the few Canadians for whom hockey is not a part of her daily life. And yet that doesn't actually matter, because what we recognize is that what's occurred here is a terrible tragedy. And it's a tragedy where I cannot imagine anything worse than seeing your child die or having to live through the death of your child. So what we've done here today is you'll recognize that several folks are wearing jerseys in recognition of the Humboldt Bronco victims, their families, and their communities. And we recognize that they are in pain and suffering, and we recognize that there could be no worse time for them than the grieving and loss of their children as it is today. So what we would like to do is take a moment of silence in recognition of the tragedy that's just occurred. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Joe Pescatelito, MP of Steveston-Richmond East, to make a few comments. Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Petronik. And good morning to everyone. Bienvenue ce matin. Je suis fier d'être ici pour le ministre, mon collègue, mon ami, Jim Carr, le ministre des Ressources Naturelles. Everyone, welcome here today. It's truly my honor to be here on behalf of our Natural Resources Minister, my friend and my colleague, Jim Carr. I too want to acknowledge we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And this recognition, as was stated, is more than just a formality. It's a reminder that the first peoples were also this land's first protectors. And in a way, that's what we're here today, to talk about protecting our land long-term. And as an indigenous saying reminds us, we don't inherit this land from our ancestors, but we borrow them from our children. And that's something that we as Canadians, as British Columbians, have understood for the long time. We were the first jurisdiction in North America to put a price on carbon, and Vancouver is world-renowned for its green thinking and sustainable design. And that is why I am proud to be here today, because today we get a glimpse into the future, where the vehicles we drive don't have to harm our planet, a planet that we all share, a future where Canadians will have a choice of clean transportation options, such as electronic and fuel cell vehicles. And you know, it's really an exciting prospect, and one that relies on clean technologies that innovative Canadian companies are building today. And we have representatives here today, companies such as New Flyer Industries, Nova Bus, homegrown companies, companies that are creating Canadian jobs, and international companies as well, as ABB and Siemens. You know, our transportation sector accounts for almost 25% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. Electrical buses could dramatically reduce those emissions while encouraging more people to take public transportation. So today, I'm pleased to announce that our government, the government of our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, we are investing $1.2 million as part of the Electronic Vehicle Infrastructure Demonstration Program in overhead charging stations that will power electric buses here in Vancouver. This funding is part of our government's commitment to building out the charging and refueling infrastructure Canadians will need as they purchase electric and alternative fuel vehicles. This is a plan of long-term, thoughtful transition from one type of an economy to another. No, and all told, the federal government, we've invested over $182 million to support electrical chargers, natural gas and hydrogen fueling stations, innovative charging technologies, and the codes and standards that support them. More broadly, these investments in charging stations reflect our government's commitment to clean technology. And we believe that growing our economy goes hand in hand with protecting our environment. You need to do both. We need to live in a sustainable world. We need to create wealth, but we need to do it in a sustainable, smart way. And the companies represented here are showing us that we can also marry entrepreneurial excellence with environmental responsibility. And I know that we all congratulate them for the fine work that they're doing. The fuels and technologies that we adopt today will not only determine the kind of vehicles that are on our roads, but will determine the type of society that we live in. And it's all about a greener future, but it's also about a prosperous future where our kids and our grandkids will have jobs. And that is a future we're worth pursuing and also investing in. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this announcement. And I would now like to invite His Worship, Gregor Robertson, for his comments.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Thank you, Joe, and thanks everyone for being here. First and foremost, acknowledge and recognize that we are on Musqueam First Nation unceded territory. This is basically the Musqueam Midden just behind us here, which is the oldest large community site in North, Central, and South America, according to the archaeological records. So we give thanks to the Musqueam people for taking care of these lands and sharing with all of us who've come here from other parts of the world. We are thrilled here in the region to be leading the charge in getting electric buses on the road and getting trials of these new technologies, especially working with our Canadian bus companies, Nova Bus and New Flyer. This is something we've certainly talked about at the Mayor's Council, at the Metro Vancouver Board, and at the TransLink Board. Elected officials talking about leadership on electrifying the fleet even more. We have a lot of electric vehicles already on the road as part of TransLink's fleet, and I know Kevin will get into the details of that, but trolley buses have been a fixture for generations here in Vancouver. We're very proud of that tradition, but there's a big transformation that is happening around the world as transportation shifts to going off of fossil fuels, going electric, going to new technologies that are clean and green. And we need to be in that leadership group here on the West Coast. This is a next step in doing that, but I'm certainly looking forward to an aggressive shift to getting more electric buses on the road. And that's going to happen in these years ahead, unquestionably. We're seeing fleets transform around the world. Here in Vancouver, we have the largest electric fleet of any city in Canada right now in terms of our city vehicles, and we're looking at even more aggressive shift happening in these years ahead. But I'm excited to be here on behalf of the Metro Vancouver Board of Directors and the Mayor's Council to voice our strong support for this direction. And the funding that originally flowed from the federal government through the gas tax fund is applied by the Metro Vancouver Board. Over $7 million contributed to this project. So strong support from mayors and elected officials around the region for this, to get 4 buses on the road and the new charging technology to do that. So we have a goal here in the City of Vancouver to be 100% renewable energy powered. All of the activity in the city powered by renewable energy, which we're very lucky in BC here to have so much renewable energy available. Almost all of our electricity, thanks to BC Hydro and their legacy, is renewable power from hydroelectricity. We need to transform our transportation fleets. We need to transform how our buildings are all heated onto renewable power, and that's something we're doing aggressively at City Hall in Vancouver. That's the direction that we're headed, walk the talk and cleaning up our city. And we're seeing cities across the world making this commitment. We're seeing big corporate leaders across the world shifting to 100% renewable, making that long-term commitment and taking that immediate action. And that's what I'm happy to be here to support this next step in taking action. It's one thing to say the words about supporting the environment, about taking action on climate change. It's far more important to take action. And thanks to Hayden and the whole team at Coast Mountain Bus for embracing new technologies, looking at how important this shift is. It's going to be a lot of change for folks on the ground, whether they're the operators or those working here in the shops, keep these buses running on, and I appreciate all the work on the front lines, making all of that happen, and everyone at the TransLink team. A big thanks to Kevin and all the TransLink staff for leadership up to date. It's a great organization that provides great transit service, but is definitely focused on reducing our impact on environment, and this trial will be a big part of that. So with that, I'll introduce our CEO of TransLink, Kevin Desmond. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mayor Robertson. And good morning, everyone. First, I want to thank the great people of Vancouver Transit Center for hosting us today. And they're also going to be managing this project. And as Mayor Robertson pointed out, we have a long, fine history of electrifying both our buses and obviously SkyTrain. So we're in really good hands with the folks here at Vancouver Transit Center to help manage this project going forward. And this is certainly a very exciting day for us here at TransLink. And I often talk about the importance of partnerships. You heard from Josipa and the other speakers about the nature of partnerships. You can't do bold and cutting-edge things without help, without partners. And I am absolutely delighted with the kind of partnership we have from Metro Vancouver, from the federal government, and of course the leadership of QTRIC, as Josipa pointed out before. And it's going to take a continued partnership at all levels of government for us to foresee a quick adaptation, a rapid adaptation to low-carbon fleet strategy going forward. This demonstration project, this test, is really going to help us accelerate our adaptation as well. Every day we provide transportation to about 1.2 million people a day, boardings on our various different TransLink services, SkyTrain, C-Bus, West Coast Express, the regular bus system going forward. And this takes tens of thousands of cars off the road that would otherwise be driving, probably people driving alone in their cars each and every day. And I'm pleased to say, we've been talking about this recently, that more and more people are choosing public transportation. We were the fastest growing by ridership transit system in the United States and Canada in any metropolitan region, over 1 million people. So more people are choosing transit. We're doing the right things here, but we need to continue to do more. That demand is being propelled by our service expansion plan. And again, hats off to the Mayor's Council and the work that they have done, and then working with the province and the federal government to help us get that plan moving, to provide the kind of needed public transportation that this region has to have to improve and support our overall mobility. Now, with that focus on adding service and expanding the system, we must also be very mindful of our responsibility to provide that in as green a way as possible. Most of our fleet uses fossil fuels at this point in time. We need to study and figure out how we can slowly but surely move away from those fossil fuels. And we can do it faster with projects like this. Now, as Mayor Robertson pointed out, we are very proud, however, the diversity of our fleet and our long history of providing zero-emission electric buses. 262 electric trolley buses operating here in Vancouver and at Burnaby, all out of this particular depot. 146 compressed natural gas buses and 255 diesel hybrid electric buses, all on the road. So about half of TransLink's fleet today, about half of CNBC's fleet today is low-emission alternative fuel service. Now, with that fleet diversity, we're off to a very good start, but we're very, very eager to get started testing these new technologies that we're here to announce today. Through the 10-year vision from the Mayor's Council, one of the things they asked us to pursue was the development of a low-carbon fleet strategy. This is part of that strategy. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes science, a lot of analytics associated with determining when and how quickly we can adapt to zero-emission fleet, but you also have to do testing on the ground. That's what this project is all about. We got started last summer, in point of fact. We did an announcement right here on a nice, warm, sunny day in the summer to test a slow charge, depot charge bus that we were able to operate for about 3 months, thanks to one of the other providers of electric buses worldwide. And I'm pleased that today we can get started with start talking about this particular program. Next year, we're going to deploy 4 of the electric fast charge buses on our Route 100 connecting Vancouver through Burnaby to New Westminster. And I am so pleased that we're helping to lead the way here in Canada. We'll be joining, as Josipa pointed out, our friends from the eastern part of the country. The trial will test a variety of things, naturally. We're going to evaluate how the battery charging stations work, how it works en route with the buses, how long it takes for the buses to turn around with their charging, what it means for our overall route network. Our route network's very, very complicated, and the adaptation to electric buses, whether they're fast charge or the overnight depot charging, either one of those technologies or both technologies are likely going to be our choices going forward, but we need to understand how they're going to work within our route network. What's the maintainability of the routes? How will we maintain those routes going forward? What's the price point? What's the value proposition as well to make sure that not only are we doing well on zero emissions from a climate standpoint, but it also provides really good bottom line value to TransLink and our taxpayers going forward. We're delighted as well to be working with our longtime partners, Nova Bus and New Flyer, and that these 4 buses are made in Canada, built in Canada by Canadian companies. We're delighted to continue to partner with Nova and New Flyer, with whom we've been partnering for a very, very long time. The overhead charging stations will be installed in 2 places, at the 22nd Street SkyTrain station in New Westminster and at the Marpole bus loop just a short distance from here in Vancouver. The buses we would expect will charge in about 4 to 5 minutes at each of those locations during the normal bus layover period. And the charge, we estimate between 22 and 30 kilometers on a charge, although the distance between Marpole and 22nd Street is only about 15 kilometers. So we're well within the range of capacity for the charging system. I also, again, want to extend our thanks to our various different funding partners, Natural Resources Canada, BC Hydro, and of course, Metro Vancouver for granting the gas tax to make this happen, and obviously Cutric, as I mentioned before. So with that, I want to bring on David Warren from New Flyer. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, David Warren with New Flyer, and I'm here on behalf of our CEO, Paul Soubry, and our president of New Flyer, Wayne Joseph, and our president of MCI Bus, Ian Smart. New Flyer Industries is a Canadian company. We have 6,000 team members based in Winnipeg and other parts of North America. We're the only manufacturer that produces 3 types of zero-emission buses. The overhead trolley electric type buses that you see here currently in British Columbia that Kevin spoke about. We also do fuel cell electric buses that use fuel cells from Ballard Power Systems here in British Columbia, as well as Hydrogenics, also a Canadian-based company. And then the third type, of course, what we're here to talk about today is battery electric buses that use charging systems to charge the batteries. And to put it in simple terms, what we're here to do collectively through the Q-Trick organization is to prevent what happens with devices such as phones, when you have different types of charging systems for similar type devices. And working hand in hand with other bus manufacturers and equipment manufacturers such as Siemens and ABB, we're avoiding that situation. The whole world is looking at this Q-Trick project to ensure that we can do this. It is truly a unique, one-of-a-kind project that nobody else in the world has completed. These same type of charging systems are being deployed in cities such as Los Angeles and New York, but nobody has ever done a project like this to test the equipment out to ensure that it is fully interoperable so that the taxpayer dollars that pay for this equipment have as much versatility as they possibly can. So on behalf of New Flyer, we're pleased and proud to be part of this program, and with working with private and public entities to do something that is so important. Sustainability is all about protecting the environment and preserving our resources. And the Vancouver and British Columbia area, the whole world looks to for these type of projects. On behalf of New Flyer, thank you, and I'd like to introduce Chris Trimbecki with NOVA. Thank you.
Hi, dear colleagues, business partners, guests. It's with great excitement that I'm here today to discuss those excellent news for public transport and environment. Came from Montreal, and the city of Vancouver is already greener, much greener, and with this project it will be getting even more green. NovaBus is very proud to be one of the key stakeholders in this very innovative and unique project. I say unique as in this project, various competitors, manufacturers of buses and charging infrastructure are partnering together to prove that our technologies are compatible and interchangeable. We do believe that this flexibility allows our customers with transition to electric transit with even better economy. With this project, City of Vancouver and TransLink will have the very modern and top of the art when it comes to environment infrastructure on the streets. A project like this wouldn't see the light without great support from many key stakeholders. So thank you very much for being such visionary leaders. Also, I would like to salute City of Vancouver and TransLink for their engagement in transport electrification and sustainable mobility. So thank you very much, and together we do make a difference for the environment and for the city. Thank you.
I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our esteemed colleagues. And before we open it up to questions and turn it over to the media team here at TransLink, a few summary comments to make. One is, as you can hear today, the whole idea here is to make sure that transit is the forefront of innovation. And I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said a man in his 30s without a car was a failure. Well, she was in the 1980s talking, maybe that was true in the 1980s. Our goal in the 2010s is that that is absolutely categorically untrue, that transit is faster, cheaper, smarter than passenger cars ever could be, and eventually sexier too. So that's really where we're going. And therefore, here we have the opportunity to make transit really the cutting edge technology test bed for advanced technologies that create Canadian jobs. And that's just not how we've thought about transit in the past, and it's how we have to think about transit in the future. I also want to take this opportunity to recognize that Q-Trick is the only smart mobility or shared smart mobility innovation consortium in North America. And in that role, we are also the only consortium with a board of directors that is 50% women, one of whom is here, Sarah Buckle, as a board of director member. And this is what happens when you have 50% women at the top executive levels of decision-making, world-class projects that change the world. So point of fact. And third, I'd like to simply note the Canadian content piece here. It is categorically untrue that Canada does not make electric vehicles. So the auto sector has not really been moving forward in Ontario in terms of creating and manufacturing electric cars. But it is not true that we don't manufacture electric vehicles. We do. They happen to be located in Winnipeg and at Nova Bus's facilities in Quebec. So we have an opportunity here to really raise our profile as Canada, making electrified heavy-duty powertrain platforms. So with that, I want to thank esteemed colleagues, and in particular, thank Natural Resources Canada for taking a chance on us, in the great words of ABBA. When they launched their funding program 2 years ago, they were thinking only cars, and they were thinking DC chargers for electric cars. We asked them, we pleaded, and they heard our begs and our offering to offer a project that would be electric transit oriented, and they opened up their funding portal, visionary as they were, to allow that. And so we really need to thank Minister Jim Carr and Natural Resources Canada staff for seeing the vision 2 years ago when a lot of folks simply weren't. So with that, I want to thank again all of our esteemed colleagues and turn it over to our media colleagues here at TransLink. Thank you.
Very much, Josipa. We'll now take some questions from the media specifically around the project. The platform party here is available, should you have any.
The passengers notice, what will their experience be like?
Probably not a lot different other than they're quieter. But, you know, the bus behind us is one of the new Flyers that happens to be a 60-foot articulated coach. We'll be testing 40-foot coaches. But it's within the platform that both Nova and New Flyer already have, which is similar to the newer buses that we're getting. So quieter ride. Electric buses are going to be quieter just like electric cars are. I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
That's true. Also, maybe I add, that's for the passengers and for the people on the street walking or living close to the bus stop when the bus is stopped and then accelerating to take on. That's the quieter element that is also important for both passengers and the others in the city.
Next question.
Just one other thing to add. You know, one of the unique things about electric vehicles is that when you decelerate and slow down, you reuse that energy in reverse, and so it's charging the batteries. And one great thing about electric vehicles is that the driver will not be hitting the brakes, so it will slow down very progressively. And with our battery electric buses, we don't have a transmission. So that whole experience of what you have in transit right now, as Kevin mentioned with the quietness, it also equates to the smoothness and the overall quality of the ride. Thank you.
There are already trolley buses in the TransLink network, so how is this battery charged electric bus going to perform differently from the trolley bus that TransLink has?
You know, really the trolley, trolley electric buses and electric motors in transportation has been around for over 100 years. So when you look at the overall propulsion system of those type of buses, they're driven by electric motors, which is well-proven technology. So when TransLink goes into this project, really the whole propulsion system is very similar to the trolley electric buses. What is new and why electric vehicles are making such an impact in our transportation system now is lithium-ion batteries have gotten so much better. And we've seen over the past 5 years essentially the same amount of energy being stored in these batteries, twice as much as what it was 5 years ago. So the relevancy of electric transportation and what has changed really has been in the battery technology. And then if you extend that to fuel cell electric buses, the fuel cell really acts as an onboard battery charger, taking hydrogen that's on the bus and combining it with oxygen, air, which then creates electricity to charge the batteries on board. So three types of zero-emission buses, battery electric, trolley electric, fuel cell electric, they have a lot of commonality.
And I want to add one more thing. It's fairly self-evident, but the trolley system is limited by the wire, the overhead wire. So as wonderful as the trolleys are and the type of performance, we get zero emission, very good acceleration, somewhat smoother ride. It is limited by the wire. So I think what we get to try out with the battery buses and see how it can be deployed throughout our system. As I said, only 250 or so of our buses are electric trolley because that's fixed by the the overhead trolley network. The coming of battery technology and the advances that are being made allows us to dramatically expand potentially zero-emission fleet going forward.
And maybe to complement those answers, I would add that the energy efficiency of an electric bus due to the energy recuperation when the bus is decelerating, that's one of the differences comparing to the trolley bus. So the energy efficiency is one of the features, except the other ones mentioned.
Alia, I'm going to add one comment. So since we don't have ABB and Siemens here, I'll just give you some info on the charging side as well. So if you can envision the future, what's happening here is right now, if your buses are connected to the grid in the trolley catenary, it's pretty much constant power load, right? You can't really throttle or play around with the power level too much. In this scenario, and this is speaking towards standardization, the buses are going to, if you can visualize it, they're going to pull into the station, and as passengers get on board, there's an overhead robotic arm that comes down from the charger and connects while people are loading on and off. So passengers won't feel it too much, but effectively what's happening is a robotic connection. Now, right now, you can get those charging systems at 150 kilowatts, 300 kilowatts. We're pushing it up to 450 kilowatts. We want to go to 600, maybe 1 megawatt in the future. And what that allows people to do at TransLink is say, oh, the bus is running behind schedule, throttle the charger up, let it deliver power at 450 or 600 kilowatts, so it drives the charging time down to a couple seconds or less than a minute. But if there's more time in the schedule, it's non-peak period, well, we want to reduce our electricity costs so we can throttle it down to 300 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts and save the battery. So there's a lot more technological dynamics. You can work with your utility, and this also leads to the fact that these charging systems with this dynamic throttling capability mean utilities could get involved in a whole new business model around helping transit to own, operate, maintain, or throttle these charging systems in the future, which you just can't do with static catenary lines.
Jill, anyone back there? Okay.
Hi, Global Television. Question for the federal government. Will the pipeline fight jeopardize transit funding?
I'll leave that conversation to Minister Carr. We're here to discuss a phenomenal new approach to how people get from one place to the other. And if you truly want to impact climate change and have a progressive, sustainable environment, as has been stated, we need to change the infrastructure. And that's what we're here today to discuss, changing the infrastructure so that at a certain point, very soon, we'll have a non-carbon economy.
So we have one more question up here from CBC.
The cost of developing these buses, and what do you expect the cost per bus will be eventually compared to a regular trolley bus or diesel bus?
I can say that the cost of the bus or the price of the bus depends very much on the specification of the bus. But let's say an average bus, electric bus, it's the price of it we see it's around $1 million, 800,000 American dollars, about over 1 million Canadian dollars.
So I would answer your question that the upfront capital cost of electric propulsion in transit is very similar to what you're seeing in the automotive market. The upfront costs are higher. They generally weigh a little bit more because you're carrying batteries. And the range is a little bit less, which is why this on-route charging project through this Q-Trick program is so important, because with this type of infrastructure in place, the buses will be able to operate for up to 18, 20 hours a day if necessary without returning to the depot. But here's the key, is that with the energy costs, and if the energy can be managed well, the potential payback is in over, say, a 10-year period, 400,000 Canadian dollars in energy savings. And then electric propulsion buses have a lot less maintenance because they don't have filters, they don't have belts, and other things that you would have in an internal combustion engine. So we think overall, as a life cycle cost, electrification is the way to go.
I'll just give you the figures for this project here in TransLink and some comparables. So if you just high level, high ballpark it, kind of, if you say diesel bus is about $500,000 or $600,000, well, an electric is around 1.1 million. So you've got about a $500,000 differential you have to pay off, and then add in the chargers. Usually you have a charger at each end, and each charger is about $1 million. So obviously you can understand a lot of city councilors, a lot of folks thinking, why would I pay $2 million for 2 chargers and a bus versus $500,000 for diesel? Well, the reason is that, of course, those 2 chargers can handle 10, 20 buses, depending on the route, so they're not actually that expensive. And then when you add in the operational savings here, when we modeled it out in TransLink, the buses compared to diesel, what TransLink pays for diesel, you're looking at about $100,000 a year saved per bus in diesel costs. So you add it up, your payback period, take 2 chargers, 2 million, divide by 10 buses, 200,000, 500,000 differential, that's 700,000. You basically have a payoff period in 5 to 6 years. And that's not even including the operational savings on maintenance because of the reliability of electric motors. So that roughly gives you some figures. It could be drawn down, and what the modeling shows is the more you drive these buses, the more you save money. So what you don't want to do, of course, is sit them in the garage. You want to drive them out there, which is exactly what TransLink's doing with high ridership.